step closer to issuing an MVNO license. What's that? Well, it's a mobile virtual network operator, basically a wireless communication service provider that does not own the wireless network infrastructure, the likes of WhatsApp, Skype, etc. The Telecom Commission has now approved the telecom regulator's recommendation to award MVNO licenses. Prerna Barua now joining us with that story. Prerna, take us to the details, and what's this going to mean for such players?
Well, absolutely. Virtual network operators will soon come under the licensing framework and will soon come under the regulatory, framework as well. The Telecom Commission, who met today, has accepted the TRAI's recommendations on creating a separate category of unified licenses for virtual network operators. The Telecom Commission expects large-scale rollout potential out of virtual network operators, and is also expected to reduce marketing and sales cost for telecom companies. In fact, the Telecom Commission also says that this will be a game changer for the telecom, industry. The TRAI's recommendations that was released in May 2015 states that VNOs should be brought under the licensing framework, and that VNOs should be allowed to offer voice, data, and video services. VNOs will also have to pay spectrum usage charges and license fees to the government at the same rates as paid by the telecom operators currently. There will be no cap on the number of VNO licensees in a single service area. And of course, even local cable operators and multi-service providers can also obtain VNO licenses. In terms of validity of such licenses, it will be a 10-year validity period. So clearly, the likes of WhatsApp, Viber and Skype, as you mentioned, will come under the licensing framework. And of course, the government has indeed moved a step closer in regulating such players as well. And we also understand that the DOT will soon move the cabinet for its approval in the next 15 days. Back to you.
All right, Prerna, appreciate you joining us with those details. In fact, just a few days ago, in fact, exactly a week ago, the Telecom Secretary was speaking to me at the CNBC TV 18 Mint budget event, had said that the government was looking at finalizing this license, and it would be a matter of few weeks when we would get clarity on that front. Listen in.
We are on the anvil of certain very far-reaching reforms, and if I may say so, I can mention 2 or 3 of them,
okay,
which should make telecom operations more efficient and help the top line as well as the bottom line. One is that the industry has been demanding a new license of a virtual network operator.
Right.
That is something which is on the anvil of final decision making. It should go to the Telecom Commission next week, and if it is agreed upon, it should be a reform which will happen in weeks rather than months.
Well, that's the Telecom Secretary, J.S. Deepak, in an exclusive conversation with me, giving us a heads up on the MVNO license being finalized. Now, the key question is, what will this mean for the industry? Will this also involve OTT players like WhatsApp, Skype, Vibers and others? Let's ask the Director General of the Cellular Operators Association of India, Rajan Matthew. Rajan Matthew, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. The Telecom Commission believes that this is going to be a game-changing opportunity for the sector. Explain that to us. Who's going to be interested in getting an MVNO license, and why?
So, Shireen, thank you. MVNOs, when you look globally, do well when there is limited competition, when there is excess capacity, and when there's a strong brand that somebody wants to leverage off of in terms of marketing and sales, and they're obviously riding on an existing network. When you look at the Indian situation, where you have 7 and 8 operators already existing in each circle, with almost near rock bottom prices, with not a whole lot of margin and not a whole lot of excess capacity, we will have to wait to see how much of an impact MVNOs will have in India. I think India is different in that sense. We don't expect that it is going to be a significant game changer, because obviously spectrum is going to be the critical component of the success, and that's going to be held by the operators, and MVNOs will simply ride on top of that. So we'll have to wait to see how this plays out as one goes forward.
But Rajan Matthew, who would typically be interested in getting an MVNO license in the Indian scenario?
A good question, Sharon. First of all, when you look globally, the one that comes to mind that has been relatively successful is somebody like Virgin that went into the UK and parts of the US and was successful because it had a very strong brand and appeal to a particular segment, which is the youth segment, and they were able to leverage that because they had great sales and marketing. Now, who would be able to come into India and want to do an MVNO is a good question. Possibly somebody who has applications that they believe has a strong appeal to segments and then would like to offer that to various segments of the population that they believe might be interested. And they would then tie up with an operator and make sure that they can buy aggregated minutes and aggregated bandwidth and offer the particular application. So that is a possibility when we look at what might happen here in India.
So Rajan Matthew, explain to us, because there is still no clarity on what the government intends to do and how it intends to regulate, if at all, the likes of Viber, WhatsApp, Skype, etc. If the MVNO license were to be on the as an option on the table, and that's what the government is working towards, would it automatically mean that these services or the OTT players would need to go through this route?
Not necessarily. Obviously, the OTT players continue to play as they presently do by obviously riding on a access medium, which is access to the internet. And once you have access to the internet, obviously any of these applications that are provided through that continue to be provided. So, you know, the fact that there are OTT players, they will perhaps look at this if they see a margin opportunity, but that's going to be tough in the Indian context. So I think that's going to be a separate decision. As you well know, Sharon, the previous chairman of the TRI had floated this OTT paper, and we are awaiting the outcome of that because we did provide our input. So whether this will be something that rides on an MVNO is hard to tell at this point.
You're absolutely right. In fact, my conversation with the current TRAI chairman, he said that the TRAI is looking at the OTT aspect of it in its paper, or the consultation paper on net neutrality that's expected in about a fortnight or so, and perhaps that issue will be addressed there. But we know the COAI's point of view on how to deal with voice calls, the likes of which Viber and WhatsApp are providing. But Rajan Matthew, thanks very much for joining us and explaining to us what the possibility of an MVNO could mean here in the Indian context. Let's move on now. It's